Welcome to another 3 questions in 3 minutes with our 2022 Power Players in Education. Today's guest has a name straight out of a storybook, AnnaLee Dragon, the perfect last name for the executive director of the New York Library Association. And in this role, AnnaLee leads the association in its mission to educate and advocate for the advancement of New York's library community. And before joining NYLA earlier this year, AnnaLee was the director of the Kinderhook Memorial Library in Columbia County, where she oversaw a large project there of renovation and expansion. So thank you so much, AnnaLee. I'm thrilled to be here with you.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
So part of NYLA's work is policy-oriented, working with lawmakers to introduce and improve legislation that impacts libraries and library funding. What are some examples of recent legislation that NYLA successfully advocated for?
So I'm going to give a big shout out to our Director of Government Relations and Advocacy, Brianna McNamee, who helps spearhead all of these initiatives. But the first is an extension of construction grant funding. So there are these construction grants through New York State that public libraries can apply for. They're usually given 3 to 4 years to complete them. If they don't complete them in that time, it can affect their eligibility for state aid. With the pandemic and the supply chain issues, it became really problematic to finish those in time. So NYLA was able to successfully advocate for a bill that provided libraries an additional 2 years if they were affected by supply chain issues to complete those construction projects while maintaining their eligibility for their state aid. And then another is we recently advocated for trustee education, which was not required previously. So this bill required each trustee, elected or appointed, of a public or association library to complete a minimum of 2 hours of trustee education annually, beginning in January of 2023.
Wow, so two pretty big aspects, two pretty big pieces of legislation that I think most people wouldn't necessarily realize are so important and have such big impact. So it's great that NYLA is doing this work. One of the association's stated goals is also to promote free, open, and equal access to information. So I wanted to ask you, could you explain a little bit more the role that you see that libraries have, or maybe the potential role they have to advance education equity?
Sure. So there are a couple facets to this that I thought I would touch on. One is the digital divide. Often schools are providing hotspots and they're providing equipment for students to be using at home. However, internet access is, hotspots only work where cell service works. And so the libraries become a place where you have maybe your own equipment, but you access internet. Or if you're just not that skilled at using the internet and you need assistance with that, Starbucks is not going to help you, but libraries will. So we have trained professionals that are there to help everybody. So I think the digital divide is one way that we help to advance. Bridging that divide is a way that we advance equity of education. There's also the idea of equity of access, which you touched on there. And in this day and age of book challenges and bans and people being very upset about materials that are being distributed, libraries are at the front line of that. And so it's key to our role and our core values that we make sure that everybody feels seen and represented in our collections and our programming and our displays. And libraries provide that by being a place that anybody can go and read about anything. And all of that kind of gets tied up in the idea that we feel strongly that every K through 12 school library needs a certified school library media specialist in the doors to help students become educated consumers of information and to become educated citizens that can actively participate and evaluate information that they're given. And NYLA has been advocating for that to be legislation for a while now, that there be a requirement to have those positions in our schools. We think it's super important to the future of our democracy.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think it's a major topic of conversation both in the state and nationally. So it's great that you're able to kind of bring light to the role that libraries can really play in this larger aspect of education. So now, time for the hardest question of all. I would love to know your favorite fiction book and your favorite nonfiction book.
So asking a librarian this is like asking me to choose my favorite child. it's very hard. I did think about it a lot. Favorite fiction is not as hard because I've had a favorite for a long time. It's The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho. It's all a fable about following your dreams and how when you go after the things that you really care about in life, the universe will conspire to help you. I'm a big believer in speaking things into existence. And so I think The Alchemist is my favorite fiction book. As far as nonfiction, this one's hard because I read a lot of nonfiction. I picked my favorite recent one that I read, which is Laziness Does Not Exist by Devin Price. And I feel like it should be required reading. We have this cult of busyness where we feel like everybody being busy is a badge of honor and being burnt out, and especially post pandemic. This was the book I needed. This book is full of practical and accessible advice about how to overcome this cult of busy and how to not feel like your productivity equals your value as a human being.
Amazing. I'm adding both of these to my reading list. Well, thank you so much, AnnaLee. It's been a joy, and thank you for educating us about NYLA and for being a 2022 Power Player in Education.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate the honor. And yeah, I'm happy to be here. It was a wonderful experience.